Okay, it's time to piss people off again. Maybe all kinds of people this time. Don't know, because, well, in a lot of ways I'm very liberal. In others, I'm something of a Neanderthal. So, I ran across a second, maybe third instance of a war game designer that I know of. Different ones in each case, who essentially transitioned from male to female. Now, okay, such is life. This one doesn't want to be known by her male name ever and had it removed, which is a little annoying because the way I found out was I ended up searching for this person, and I'm not going to, by the name that I knew them. It was someone who actually, I think, a friend of mine, I think I met the person. I'm not positive, but I think a friend of mine went to stay with them for a while. A friend who lives a very, very much more exciting life than I do and always has, with very low resources, but he's just very clever at not just making friends, but making friends who are willing to let him live with them for a while and whatever. Anyway, that's outside the point, but yeah, he did one of those little. I find some piece of garbage and I trade up. Like he found a piece of string and traded for a paper clip and trade. And I mean, he got a reasonable thing in the end, and then couldn't parlay that any further into something more exciting. But whatever. But he's just very, very charismatic in that sort of way, and of course he's a complete asshole. But people who are that way are. He's an asshole, but he's my friend sometimes. Not the only person in my life that I would say that about. But they're interesting people. They tend to be bridges between the kind of people that I am and normals, and more hyper than either. But outside of that, because again, I think I'm just delaying here. So I'm trying to think of what my first sort of experience with people who may or may not, who were trans, are, whatever. I don't know. It's kind of like, once you transition, are you still trans? I'm not sure I agree, right? My first real experiences that I can recall, whereas, I knew people who did drag one way or the other long before, but the first experiences that I had were in sort of the late 2000s, 2007, 2008, somewhere in that range, for a few reasons. One, I was here in Eugene for school, and it was more acceptable here at that point, and I knew people who weren't trans. Like remember mentioning a guy I used to go to class with would often wear a skirt. Very clearly not a kilt or anything like that, like a gauzy skirt or something. Absolutely straight. That was cool and okay at that point. I don't think it is anymore. Like, I feel like something changed while I was away, which feels kind of odd. It's like the needle keeps fluctuating and swirling back and forth and all kind of stuff like that. And I thought that was kind of cool because, I would wear a skirt around the house. I remember, going back, it's just comfortable and I don't want to waste clothes. And it's like, if I had one, I would wear it sometimes and not feel terribly weird about it, right? I think with my first wife, I would wear one sometimes just around the house. I'm trying to think if I wore before that, so that would be mid-20s. And I know when I was in Phoenix, I would sometimes because I found I had I'm delaying again, it seems. I had a motel next to me where they would throw out the clothes that was left behind on, a semi-regular basis. And it would just I don't know how or why it was done, but it would just be thrown over their fence onto the street. Not the street itself, but near the sidewalk. And there'd just be a couple big plastic bags full of clothes. And I got a sufficient amount of stuff that way. It all kind of evened out because I think I left a bag of clothes and other important things to me, including some that I really kind of miss, at a motel on the way through California. So, you know, the few articles of clothing that I found that were worth having don't make up for what I ended up losing, if that's indeed what happened. Because I'm missing the bag too, so it's yeah. I thought it would be in Phoenix, it wasn't. Anyway. It's just a matter of, sloppy around the house stuff. No feelings whatsoever in when I'm wearing that, oh, I feel so pretty or anything like that. It's comfy, the same way I wear just a pair of shorts if I'm going to wear a pair of shorts. Well, this was actually comfier. I don't have one anymore. I had a maternity gown in Phoenix, which was not so comfy because, I don't know, covered the top. I liked to go topless when I was there. And, but anyway, going back to Eugene, one, I knew a guy who wore a skirt a few times a year. I'd see people at the markets who wore them. There was a guy who wore a tutu who regularly showed up at the Saturday market and with makeup and everything. And I don't know if he was in drag or whatever, but I mean, he'd be there with a big old cigar in his mouth and everything. It was just kind of like this really weird visual, And I don't know, I exchanged words with him, nothing regarding how he was dressed or how I was dressed or anything. Just, I don't know, he said a couple of things and I responded or whatever, as one does when people talk, and seemed kind of weird. But there were a lot of weird characters here. There still are, but it seems to have changed its nature in a lot of ways. The town seems to be in much worse condition than it was when I was here the first time, in terms of homelessness, in terms of the type of people who are homeless now. Before, it was a lot of kids from, who I guess ran away or something and came here. And now, well, maybe some of them are still here and still homeless, and others, from I was out of here before the financial crash. So it actually would have to have been before 2008, 2005, somewhere around there at the start. I was also involved in an online community for Asperger's, and I became friends with someone who was in the UK and was transitioning, and from female to male, and undergoing, hormone therapy and everything else. And part of me was the troll that I am, and would pick on him now. and he wanted to be a him, he wanted to be considered him at that point, even though he wasn't fully transitioned. But I think he's married now, and, you know, whatever. My feelings in terms of these kind of cases are sort of, look, I don't care what you are. I don't care who you are. You can be whatever you want to be to yourself, and you can present however you want to be. And I will try to take you under those kind of terms. I do have a grump, and here's the biggest thing. The biggest place where I end up clashing has to do with language. I really don't like they, them. And yes, I know. It is used in the can't tell what, generally it's used as a plural, but it's also used in the can't tell, okay? Every now and then. I saw a person by the railroad tracks and they. You can say that and that's fine. I'm just not thrilled with it. It grates. I was probably more militant about it at a different time in my life, when we go back those 20 years or whatever. But that was the biggest thing that I really didn't like. I also have a general opposition to female to male transition, simply because, hey, that weakening the pool. And this was, you know, the funny thing is, this was someone I really got along with very well in a lot of ways, and had, you know, interests in common with and everything. And I don't know, I was kind of like, well, you know, I might be interested in you if you stay female. But yeah, and we were actually both attracted to the same person, and of course that plays into certain of my tastes very, very well. But that's neither here nor there. As so much is. Yep, I can tell I'm blushing. So within all of that, and that's sort of my my Neanderthal side showing through, but also I want to touch on the I don't care who you are, what you are. If you want to be treated in a certain way, if you want to present in a certain way, I got no problem with that. I got no problem with that at all. In fact, to the extent, and this is where I'm going to start sounding even more Neanderthal, if you say you're a duck, I'll buy that. You know, I know you're not a duck. And this is the kind of thing. I can tell, perhaps with some people, especially if they transition, you know, well past puberty, that this wasn't their original sex that they're presenting with. But this is an interesting thing. Let me go back again, because it's the sex versus gender thing, okay? Us wokies, and I still consider myself woke, or certainly very liberal in these sort of things, say things like, gender is only a construct. Damn straight, it's a social construct. But there is an underlying other thing, which is sex. And it's not cut and dry, but sex is not a construct. It may still be a continuum, but it's definitely not a construct. And within that, there's certain biological markers, etc., which get complicated. When you get to the genetic level, there's some weird shit going on. When you get to the phenotypical level, there is as well. And that's where intersex people come in. And that's simply, you know, you have people who are born with both sets of genitalia. You have people who are born with some slight weirdnesses. That percentage is, I think, pretty low. I looked online just to check because I had heard widely varying numbers. But it's not tiny. It's somewhere close to 2%, okay, who apparently have something going on to such a degree that there's sort of a medical process that takes place soon after their birth where it's decided which sex they're going to be. And then, you know, obviously what sex you actually are generally determines what gender roles and whatever you play within a society. So when that decision is being made in that sort of way, you can definitely see where that 2% or whatever is going to be problematic, right? These are people who even showed phenotypical aspects that interfere with any kind of cut and dry, black and white conceptualization of what sex is someone. And this was something that, you know, I didn't even know about until I started interacting, you know, with my friend online. And I mean, I knew there were I knew there was a small sliver of people, you know, and it was like, oh, these are hermaphrodites or whatever. Yeah, but that's like the most extreme cases, which are pretty damn rare. But there are also cases where some sort of intervention, some sort of decision still has to be made. And I'm not sure it has to be. It may be that it's being made stupidly. I mean, I can't tell you the answer to that. But right now, and, you know, with modern science, it's been more or less the practice. So, then comes the, hey, what are you transitioning, right? Like, if you're not undergoing any medical, any you know, hormonal therapy or whatever, seems, and possibly surgeries as well, it seems very clear you're just, that's where sort of transgender fits in. I don't give a shit about transgender, right? Like, I don't really consider myself a man. I never have. I don't consider myself a woman either. I kind of still think of myself as a little boy. You know? That's because the me, in a lot of ways I see the me before puberty as like the ideal me, and everything after that has become tainted and less able to cope. Although I never was really able to fit in or anything with the reality of what was happening in life, I definitely didn't see that sort of, you know, I don't know, whatever it is that transitions you to an adult. And I'm not just talking about sex, I'm talking about all kinds of things about adulthood that just like feel kind of wrong to me. And it's that, like, I consider myself definitely male and definitely straight, but not really like making that transition from boy to man ever. And maybe it's just a matter, you know, you hear this kind of complaint all the time, right? Of, you know, guys never really grow up or whatever. And maybe it's just a matter of I have as I often like to think, I have so much introspection going on and whatnot that I can see that I haven't made that and never will, you know? But, oh wow, that's a space shuttle, not a roach. It's an image, I know that, but it looked kind of like a roach from like Paranoia. One of the modules had that. So clearly you could use the term transgender, but again, I kind of see gender as pointless, right? I see that as the same kind of skin that you're putting on when you decide, I'm going to be a biker or I'm going to be a businessman, you know? Your choices of dress, of presentation, of appearance, of how you speak, all these kind of things. Sure, some of them become habits and they become more ingrained and become more real to you. But to me, it's all that kind of thing. It's more habitual. And of course, being the kind of crazy I am, I always saw people who dressed in a certain way all the time as like, wow, that's weird. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you want to like explore, you know, different options? And I mean, you see it with me. My facial hair changes. My, you know, I dress in different ways depending on how I feel. I'll wear a leather jacket and jeans and a t-shirt when I feel in a certain mood. I'll dress as an 18th century fop at other times. Of course, I'm getting too fat to get away with that anymore. Not that fops couldn't be fat, but that my clothes are all either shredded or I've outgrown that fit that. Sometimes I'll wear a suit and a tie and, you know, sometimes, you know, and I just have these sort of archetypes of a sort that I shed and wear at different times. And I think males especially tend not to do that. You know, they might dress a certain way because of their work situation or whatever and have a different way of dressing when they feel free of that. I never feel completely free of those constraints except when I'm just at home lounging around. And then what do I dress in? I dress in fucking sweats if it's cold enough to wear them, or as little as possible otherwise. I go just straight for comfort, no style whatsoever, right? And every now and then I'll decide, okay, for a particular video, a couple of times I've dressed in a certain way for it, you know, whatever that is. If I'm not wearing absolute slob clothes, you know, even if I'm wearing like just a short sleeve silk shirt or whatever, like I did a fair amount in Phoenix, I probably made the decision of, I'm doing a video, I don't want to look like a complete slob right now. I don't care anymore. Plus, again, I've shredded most of my clothes one way or another and haven't been able to go out and get the finery that I like to wear. Let me swap batteries. I've got tea cooking and I'm gonna have to take another quick break, but I look at, you know, that sort of the decision to present as a certain gender, which may not be a decision that you change regularly, right? I see that as almost unimportant, right? Along the lines of how I dress at different times, right? Or what different moods affect my patterns of speech. So then, what about the other side of it? Is it something different to say, I feel so much like a man or a woman that I want to actually change my sex? And you know, sort of my first, going back earlier to like in the mid 80s when I was first kind of exposed to Rocky Horror, which, just to show my Neanderthal creds, we used to call Rocky Homo. Well, a friend of mine came up with that, and I thought it was kind of funny. But they used the word transsexual for what to me appeared to be an extreme case of drag more than anything else, right? And again, I feel like there's a confusion in terms here. Going back to that same period, I had this guy I used to live with. We were in a house, five of us, all gamers. First time I was living off campus, and he was an interesting fella. Three of us were virgins, but myself and one other, and we shared a room actually. Like, that's how I got into the place. Was he had a huge room available, and he's like, "Yeah, I can put you in my room," because I really wanted to get the fuck off of campus after a year in hell. But we shared a room for I don't know, a couple of years, and both of us found girlfriends during that time. But anyway, we were both young, you know, or relatively young. Second year in college, so like 19, 20, you know. But this other guy was a grad student. Very good looking guy. Certainly on looks alone would not have had a problem. But he was a virgin by choice. Jewish guy, really interesting fellow. But and you know, he left. He, you know, obviously he'd been through undergrad in a different state, came to Buffalo, went to grad school there, and then switched to North Carolina. I don't know if it was for post-grad work or if he switched to a school that, you know, was doing the research he was more interested in. I don't remember which it was, but like within a couple of months of him moving to his third sort of college experience, he ends up with a girlfriend and everything. It's like, what the hell? You know, this is not what I expected. But he used to be kind of a stickler for, they shouldn't put sex on forms, they should put gender. And I'm like, no. What does the government care about your gender? Like, knowing the difference of the two terms, what the fuck? Why? I'm not sure why they care about either, but why would they care about gender more than sex? Anyway, I gotta go pour. Anyway, when I started, you know, thinking about talking to people in this later period of my life, where, you know, it's like 15, 20 years later, yeah. I recalled that conversation, and, you know, was able to put it better into context when they're saying things like gender is a social construct. I'm like, yeah, I kind of knew this all along. It's like, what the fuck? Obviously, it's a social set of rules that, like, you follow, possibly, probably, based on what your sex is. But, you know, it's similar to I'm a cowboy, or I'm a businessman, or, you know, I'm a taxi driver who likes to wear a t-shirt every day, you know, whatever. Whatever it is, it felt like it's the kind of thing that you could put on and take off at will to me. Okay? However, it always seemed strange to me was people who almost always stayed looking and being the same. Now that's almost fucking everybody. All right? This is what weirds me out. Like, I'm trying to think if I know someone who sort of encompassed a willingness to wear as many different styles as I do. My first wife probably came the closest out of everybody I know. You know, you have people who will dress up for an event or something, but you know that's not how they normally are, right? And what they normally are seems to always be the same, right? Whatever it is. And, you know, I try to think about, well, what about other people that I've engaged with? It's not just males, it's females too. They almost all just fit themselves into one little pattern. I don't know, maybe that's easier for them or something. For me, even when I was young, I liked to dress up, right? Hey, on the subject, my mom and my cousin used to dress me up as a little girl and be like, oh, here comes Susie. But they also dressed me up in all kind of other weird ways, right? And, you know, did the same kind of games in very different sort of ways where that was funny and enjoyable to them in some sort of way. And I've always enjoyed some sort of dress up, right? You know, I could definitely see myself. Yeah, so I wear various military uniforms and such not. If I had a Nazi uniform and it was allowable, you know, in society, I would wear that sometimes. I've worn things that look very fascist, brown shirt type stuff at times. And not, you know, not like I wear it regularly, but maybe once a year I pull out this presentation of myself. And that's kind of part of what I feel about acting, is that, you know, it allowed me to put on a whole new persona, which is cool. It's like neat to be other people at times, right? It's not like I'm, you know, multi-personality or anything like that. I'm really not. In fact, it doesn't tend to permeate my conversational modes or anything else. That seems to stay pretty much the same, who I am with that kind of stuff. But everyone else I knew tended to dress in a certain way. Not all the same, but if you looked at them day to day, you're like, huh, there's just a certain style there. And that's kind of what I see gender as. It's a certain style, right? It's patterns of behavior, ways of acting, the same way that you put on, you know, a leather jacket, you might put on a tough guy attitude. Or not, you know. But that attitude and that style and everything all kind of go together, and it feels like the same kind of thing that what I consider gender to be. Something that, for me at least, I would be able to change all the time. Now, this is important because it's one of the things that gets me with like cultural appropriation ideas and whatnot. If someone wants to like wear dreadlocks, if someone wants to darken their skin, you know, who the fuck cares? They may be identifying with that culture more. They may be wanting to do that. They may just want to put on that persona for a little while. That's a lot different to me from like, so I see some of these pictures of people in blackface, and it's like, they don't look like minstrel players. They look like they're making a serious attempt to enhance their costume and what they're appearing to be. And in some cases, maybe that's what they actually, feel like being, not just in a costume, but they actually feel like this would be more appropriate to who I am. Visually, I should express, myself in this way. And I'm like, that should be okay. Just like somebody should be able to play a part that they don't absolutely represent. You get this kind of thing with like autism. There was something recently where someone who was not on the autistic spectrum was playing an autistic spectrum person, and there was a stink about that. The fuck? That's what acting is about. Is being able to try to take on another role and understand it. And that's what good acting is really about, is being able to do it successfully. So what you should be doing is saying, they did a shitty job acting, rather than, we need an autistic person to play the autistic person. No. But you need someone who has enough insight to be able to kind of get a real hook on who they're playing and bring them to life without being a parody. So where were we? Right. So what the fuck is a real transsexual or transitioning sex? Not sexuality. They say you can't do that. I'm not sure I believe that either. I'm not sure I believe that. And I'll say this, like, I think sexuality is actually a matter of taste as well, and not that ingrained. But again, what do I have to go on? I have to go on my experiences, right? And maybe I'm, more bi than I think I am, But for me, like, I'm attracted to a certain type of female, looks-wise. And I am nearly disgusted by the idea of sex with anyone who'd, like, be overweight. Like, that grosses me out. More, like, I could see getting into and enjoying in the same way that I kind of enjoy sex with someone that I'm like, I guess, I don't know. It's not enjoy. Like, I've had sex with people that I'm not with women that I'm not physically attracted to. But generally, like, I've avoided anything too grossly overweight, but definitely more than I could handle. And older than I can handle, which unfortunately is its own little problem, right? Like, there ain't nothing out there that I'm interested in that would be interested in me anymore, which is cool. It frees me up from that whole constraint. But yeah, I guess I could kind of see that same sort of level of interesting, but not the same sort of desire that I would expect, right? So that's kind of weird there. And again, I see sexuality, and I kind of say, look, I think everybody's a little bit bi, but I don't know, you know? I don't know. But the people who seem the most hostile, well, I've seen proof otherwise in a lot of cases. Well, not a lot, but in a couple of cases. So, you know, I just, it feels weird to me. Yeah, I knew this girl who, you know, was just like, oh, men just gross me out. And then, you know, she ends up with a guy. My first wife, I was introduced to her as a friend of mine's lesbian friend. She wasn't ever lesbian, and nor was she, like, strongly that way. But I've definitely known and been in situations where, yeah, I at the very least, you don't mind. You know? But so what does it mean to be in that situation where you want to transition your actual sex? Well, you can't. You just can't. It's impossible because it's biological, right? If you are in that small sliver that counts as intersex, and even if it goes up to 10%, which some people claim, if you're in that sliver, you're in that sliver. You're not getting anywhere, right? If you're outside of that sliver, you're outside of that sliver. So all you're talking about, to me, is that you're not comfortable with the body that you have. I'm not comfortable with the body that I have. But it's not because, you know, I have a dick. It's because I'm too fat and I'm too fucking lazy to do anything about it, right? If you're not comfortable with how your body is, how it looks, and stuff like that, that's something different, isn't it? And in some ways, I would say I'm not comfortable with my body as a human. Battery change time. Like my other example of, yeah, I think I'm a dick. It's not that. It's more like and my past wife actually, like, she didn't think she was a duck, but she really wished she could be one, okay, as an example. The same way someone might want to be a cat, right? You have these people who go and get cosmetic surgery. Like there's a woman who wants to look like a cat, and you got to figure she kind of feels like she's a cat in some sort of way, you know, and that's why she's aiming that way. And I think that's the same sort of thing as actually going through surgical and chemical procedures, hormonal therapy, whatever, to try and change what your body's like. And I can kind of get that. Like, you know, would I do something to change the amount of fat that I have on my body? I don't know if I'd risk hormone therapy or surgery, mainly because I'm a coward or whatever. But this body is not how I see myself, you know? It just isn't. Nor is the age that I'm putting on how I see myself. Should I go get a facelift? Maybe. No. but I should dye my hair sometimes, and I do. But that's the kind of change that it feels like we're talking about here. And that kind of change doesn't feel all that fundamental. Now for me, all right, we're talking about animal, right? Or we're talking about I don't feel like I'm human in some ways. But what do I feel like? Well, just like with clothing, I feel like different things at different times, right? And it depends. It depends. But yeah, sometimes I see myself as a woodland creature, like an elf or something along those lines. More likely, I've seen myself as like this burly Viking type. Not going to be that, that happens in certain weather and whatnot. Sometimes, but probably the most consistent that I see myself as is a worm. W-Y-R-M. A weirding worm. And I see myself as almost the embodiment of a physical creature that fires like lightning through the sky. No wings, nothing else, just, shooting through the sky. And that's sort of my spirit creature, as it were, and whatnot. And if I could, do that sometimes, that would be cool. Now imagine if in a similar sort of way, first of all, you weren't somebody who puts on different personas, whatever, according to moods, but you're a more normal person, and that you really feel like, most of the time, that even though you're in a man's body, you feel like a woman. And yeah, you can dress, but that's not the same, right? Like, if you really feel like you're at odds with what your body is, I don't know if it's terrible to want to change that. Now, where does it get troublesome? Because all of this is who gives a fuck, right? It really is. I don't care, what you want to be, what you want to present as, how you see yourself. If I don't like it, if I don't like the person that you're presenting as, I don't deal with you, right? Just like I don't deal with assholes. If something really grates on me or whatever, I'm just not going to deal with it. For there, I'd go with, well, I was going to say real flaming gay guys. I really don't like them. But I got to tell you, I don't like the women who are like that either. Like, they take on, that the gay guys take on what is sort of a model, at least some of them. Many do not. But these flamers take on a certain model that feels like, a 50-year-old plus aunt or whatever, who's like, I don't know, just the way they talk and act and everything. It feels like something that's just so alien to who I am and my experiences and everything that it just grates on me horribly. And, it's kind of funny because it's not just gay guys either. Because I knew an extreme homophobe who fucking flamed. He may have been gay, may have been closeted. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, if he was closeted, he may have been closeted from himself. It wouldn't be the first case of that I've known either. Where people are gay, but they're unwilling to admit it, but they act gay in certain ways that and then, when they find out for themselves, You're like, yeah, we knew all along. Surprised you didn't. How could you hide this from yourself? But, yeah. So where the problem comes in, and where there's this real visceral issue, is when you start talking about things like bathroom issues, when you talk about sports issues, you're coming up into conflict against other interests other than your right to be who you are. And we're just going to say who you are, because, you know, who you want to be, who you are, it's the same shit. It really is. But I don't know. I mean, I want to be things that I'm not. But I want to be effective. I want to be someone who does things. But instead, I've chosen to become an e-heroin addict. But anyhow, I can see the worries there, right? I can see the worries of someone, first of all, let's put a dividing line between, you know, wherever adulthood is going to be. There's, and you can put it wherever the fuck you want. I'm not one, so I wouldn't know. But, sorry, my battery's pissing me off. Come on, you stupid piece of shit. Yeah. I definitely see a difference between, like, wherever you're going to put that dividing line, for whatever reason. But one of the problems is, if you are going to transition physically, if you're, you know, going to do hormone therapy, especially, that kind of has to be done fairly young. Not real young, but also not at the age of consent and beyond. Which is, you know, because the body undergoes changes based on puberty and based on what the physical selection is. And those are changes, I don't know. I really don't know, because it's like, you can see where it's like, these are children, they shouldn't be able to make this decision, right? They're not old enough, you know, to give consent with sex. They're not old enough to sign a contract. Yet they're old enough to make this decision. Well, not on their own, obviously, but with the support of parents and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know. I think that we give children far too little agency as it is, and that's actually a bigger problem. Bathrooms? Why would we divide bathrooms based on what sex you are? Well, guys can use urinals more easily. I mean, that's a reason for public bathrooms. I'm not sure. There's this feeling that, like, oh, we got to protect women from men in bathrooms, maybe. I don't know. Why isn't there a feeling that we got to protect men from men in bathrooms? There's a fuckload of male-on-male sexual violence, okay? Men are fucked up creatures. And I think it would make a lot more sense not to really worry about boys and girls' rooms, but rather a children's bathroom and an adult's bathroom, to be honest. Because I think that's actually, there's a much more dangerous line there. But here's the problem. Some of what we consider children, again, this has to do with the agency of children and whatnot. Yeah, we'll convict them of crimes as an adult, but like, they don't have the rights of an adult. Wow, that's fucked up, right? Like, I don't know. It so much feels like I know me at like 9, 11 years old. I think I was pretty rational. I don't think I made a lot of stupid decisions. I think I made more stupid decisions in like my 20s. You know? So, I don't know. Yeah. But not everyone's the same. And this is the kind of thing we use these cookie cutter approaches to everything in life. Maybe because it's the only way that we can handle the complexity, the same way that an OCD person follows certain rituals. And maybe because of the Pareto rule, in which case I'm not the person to talk about this because I'm obviously an outlier in so many ways, right? Like the simple fact that I don't dress the same every time, you know, that you know, whatever patterns and outfits and whatever I have. Now, I'm dressing more and more the same recently. Why? Because I've run out of clothes. Because I can't drag my ass out to a Goodwill anymore. Because the only one that's near me is overpriced and stupid. And the ones that are further away, well, they're further away. It's hard to do. I just, you know, life ain't what it used to be. And I no longer have my mom sending me cool shit. Because she'd be dead. Somewhere I hope to be soon. But on the other side of it, like, again, you can see the idea of, well, you know, look, men will molest little girls, and, you know, teenage boys will molest teenage girls. Yeah. Yeah, they will. Not sure the bathroom is the only place that's going to happen. Should we have gender-specific or sex-specific churches? That might help a lot. Certainly doctors. Just so much. Maybe how much will women molest little boys? Yeah, it happens too. And, you know, it certainly happens that you get, I don't remember what the word for it is. It's not pedophilia. I don't remember what it is, but it's basically for being attracted to teens. Certainly you see that. And, you know, it's kind of understandable, right? These, you know, you're looking at maybe not someone in their absolute prime, but there is something attractive there that's different from someone who is an adult. And then there's the power imbalance, which in and of itself can be attractive to both sides. So you do see, like, you know, these women school teachers who are having affairs with one of their teen students, male students, and it's like, you know, people are fucked up. Or maybe society doesn't reflect the reality properly. Or something. I don't know. And I'm left with why don't we just make bathrooms kind of safer and less public? You know? I'm not really thrilled whipping my dick out and pissing next to my buddy over there. Just doesn't make me happy. Doesn't make me happy. Maybe they're a little too private. Maybe that's part of it. I say make them less public. Maybe make them more public in the sense that people can, you know, it's just right there in the open. Don't worry about it. Yeah, there are other taboos and ew type factors. Okay, but, you know, whatever. Whatever. Things can change in those lines. All right. Another big one is sports. And here again, for whatever reason. So look, earlier on, we didn't really have to worry too much about women's sports. Not much. Because they just didn't compete. Right? I mean, but it became kind of a, hey, you know, it's a good idea for everyone to be involved in sports, teamwork, as well as physical fitness and all that. And obviously, look, there's a differential, right? On average, males are going to be better at certain things than females. The opposite is true too. Plenty of stuff that like those female gymnasts do that no male could do. I gotta swap batteries. And there's definitely an issue there, right? But why would we make the distinguishing line male versus female? That feels almost like, you know, the same kind of thing. Hey, maybe we should have white person sports and a Negro league. I don't know, right? I really don't know. It doesn't seem fair. To be competing against people who are biologically superior to you at certain things, right? That just doesn't seem fair. You know, it's not to say it's always the case, as Billie Jean showed, but, you know, she could not have beaten any world-class male tennis player. She just couldn't have. And should all women be excluded because males are just better at this sport? I don't know. That doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, where you're talking about where it matters is only at the very top percentages of any given capability. Yet, it's precisely at those top percentages where the problems start accruing. There was, I guess, a transitioning swimmer who it's felt had an unfair advantage. Transitioning male to female. Nobody cares if girls play in men's sports, right? That's cool. But because there are no like competitive sports other than things like gymnastics and the like, where what women have a natural advantage on gives you, you know, some sort of edge. And the women couldn't compete in the male gymnastics because that's all focused on strength and whatnot. There are ways around this. Like, I've heard people try to make arguments about certain things. I don't see a good solution to this. And for the vast majority of people, following something like the Pareto rule, right? 90-10, 80-20, whatever. For the vast majority, sex is a reasonable discriminating line there. I'm trying to think who it was. It's, one of these sports broadcaster people, a very liberal one. He's gotten in trouble a number of times. I don't remember his name. Been around for a long time. But he tried to make the argument that, look, you know, there are other things we could distinguish on. Maybe. For example, there was, and again, I don't stay up on all of these things, but there was an athlete in the Olympics, in the Paris Olympics, I think, who there were arguments that she was like, she showed too many male traits or something along that. And you always had this, you know, the hairy, big, bulky Bulgarian weightlifting women or whatever it was, you know, back in the Cold War days. Well, there were no drugs involved. She had abnormally high levels of things like testosterone in her. And it just provided her with a natural advantage. Is that fair? I don't know. You know, I think there's something very wrong with us looking at sports the way we do. But maybe that's just because of, you know, I'm not a real big fan of sports in that sort of way. Like, is it fair that someone with a biological advantage does better? Well, isn't that like 90% of what sports is about? You know? You don't see a lot of 5'4" guys on a basketball team. Right? You just don't. Should we have short people basketball too? Maybe. But we don't. and you know, we've got this sort of natural division and handicap of, okay, well, we'll split the males and females on, you know, into different leagues. Well, maybe we should also have a short males and short females league, you know, but nobody would watch it, right? I don't know. It was enough to get female sports up to any kind of level of desirability to watch as it was. And to me, this is just such a tangled mess that if it ain't all that broke, don't fix it. Now, what does that mean in terms of like school sports, where you're just like sending people to go do something in sports? Well, why are you segmenting on gender or sex to begin with, particularly? You know, for schools, pick things that everybody can do. And if they don't want to do one, give them options. When you get to the higher levels of competition, it's just going to be a problem. And it's already a mess, right? They let a guy with prosthetic legs run races, and that gave him an unfair advantage, in my view. The murderer from South Africa, right? What the hell? Why are you allowing someone with like these springs instead of legs to compete? You know? The whole what is allowable and what is not in any given sport, there are different ways to judge that. But do you ban someone because their testosterone levels are too high naturally? Is that fair? Could be one of those intersex people, and they could have been chosen to be female because it was an easier, an easier choice at that point. And now they're showing a lot of masculine tendencies. I just don't know. But that's the kind of thing where the sticking points come, right? That's where the gripes come, is bathroom issues where it's like, oh, he can just decide to be female and go in the wrong bathroom. No. But if you're so worried about that kind of thing, maybe we should look at the actuality of how we're doing this, of how we're segmenting, etc. Because the choice of bathroom feels like more of a gender, i.e. presentation thing, than it does to have anything to do with biology. But you know what? I wouldn't want somebody in there in private, with like an 11-year-old girl. Because, I'm not going to just take their word for it, right? That's no good. And I feel like the difficulty there is the way that we actually have constructed and desire bathrooms to be. Whether these kind of weird semi-public, semi-private things. Look, make them completely private. Make it so that there's a door you can lock and that it's not just a stall that people can slip under or whatever. Nobody's got a problem with a one-person bathroom. Nobody. You're never going to run into the issue there. And you can make it really tiny. Well, then you have accessibility issues. Yeah, I know. I know. And then again, look, you've got plenty of other instances where someone with ill intent can take advantage of. And, all right, maybe not as open to everyone, like you have to go through special training to be a Catholic priest, special training that probably seems to indoctrinate you or facilitate you to be more likely to molest others, but yeah, whatever. Just like we pick our politicians in such a way that they are almost invariably going to be corrupt and the kind of people we pick to lead ourselves are precisely the people you would not want leading you. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have an answer for so much of it. And I understand the recoiling from, yes, but the way we do things, this causes a problem. The thing that I look at is maybe it's the way we do things that is the problem, to be honest. And maybe it just kind of doesn't, it's got very little to do. I don't know of any circumstances where like a transgendered person snuck into a bathroom and molested someone. But I could definitely see a situation where someone who's not transgendered, someone who is like, but decides to act like they are, could take advantage of a situation where that's allowable. So, it's just, but on the other side, is it safe for the transgendered person to be going into the restroom with a bunch of bigots? I don't know. I mean, it's dangerous on both sides, no matter what you do. And this is the problem with the jail situation. maybe if we weren't incarcerating so many fucking people. Uh, but there's so much so wrong. Our society feels like it's in a flux of a sort that it's too much is rubbing against each other. Too many problems are being exposed in different sorts of ways. And there's no good answer. No matter what you do, you're going to be violating someone's perceived rights. Not real, because the only real human right is death. I assure you of that. That's the only one with any natural basis. You don't have a right to eat. You don't have a right to shelter. You don't have a right, obviously, in this world, you don't have a right to love. You don't have a fucking right to money. You don't have a right to education. You don't have a right to anything except the sweet final embrace of nothingness. Cheers.